Greetings and welcome to week 6 unit 4 on instruction for critical thinking. In the previous unit we attempted to understand what critical thinking is and its importance and possibly its difficulties. In this unit we will attempt to understand how to instruct for critical thinking. Mr. Brookfield, who has been in the field of critical thinking for a very long time, has written several books, conducted hundreds of workshops for people who are in all walks of life. He emphasizes that critical thinking is not just logical skill work, but a habit of mind. There is a lot of difference between the two. We used another word for that in the previous unit called mindful application. It's a continual effort to identify assumptions, examine them from multiple angles, and revise thinking and action when those assumptions don't hold up. That is what critical thinking is. Now, core principles of instruction. How do we instruct students, the learners? Either they can be college students or they can be working in organizations. So core principles include assumption hunting, as we mentioned in the previous unit, deliberately identify and question the taken for granted beliefs that shape thinking and action. Multiple lenses. Use 4 perspectives to reflect and improve practice. What are these 4 lenses that we want to use? Your own experience as a learner, you can call it autobiography. Students' reactions, how the students look at that. Colleagues' observations, and relevant theory and research. These are 4 lenses that you can use. Then dialogic and student-centered. Create classroom practices that let students articulate, test and revise ideas through dialogue, not simply memorize rules. It's a little difficult to create that kind of environment because faculty generally, the way we know, are not used to that kind of interaction with the students, where together you are arguing, discussing, and controlling that kind of discussion is somewhat difficult. Then you have practice plus reflection. Couple doing, that is testing, projects, discussions, with structured reflection, so learners internalized critical habits. There is always, if you want to critically think or perform something critically, then you have to build in what you call structured reflection. The learner should be able to spend time reflecting, recording what their thoughts are. Okay? And then safe risk taking. Build trust so learners can expose assumptions without fear or ridicule. Even if there is a hint of the teacher likely to ridicule, then no student will open their mouth. Okay, that I am sure all of you are familiar with. Now, how do we instruct for critical thinking? First stage, called challenging assumptions, that we always said. Assumption hunting or identifying assumptions is the first one. Assumption audits. Ask students to explicitly identify and question their assumptions about a topic or a concept. Okay. Then devil's advocate, next stage, assign students to argue against a commonly held belief or solution. That is one way of, there is another one that is proposed, what is called 6 hats. People wear one particular hat, and whoever wears that hat will have to say, argue against it, for it, advantages, disadvantages and so on. There are 6 hats. Something similar to that. If you are here is only you are taking only devil's hat that you are wearing. Okay. Then your perspective taking. Role playing, simulate real world scenarios where students must consider different stakeholders' viewpoints. For example, in the case of education, if you are trying to address any particular problem, now the current popular problem is how do you integrate AI into the classroom? That's what every college is asking, and but no discussion, it is an order, no discussion is allowed. So if you want different stakeholders' opinions are obviously required, and if you want to critically address that issue, you have to have that. Case studies analyze complex situations from multiple perspectives, identifying biases and potential impacts. So you are going through these stages. If you systematically go through these stages, then possibly it will be what you call, if you go back and forth, you will never reach conclusions, especially on many of these issues. Then you have contextual awareness. Historical analysis, examine how past events and social factors influence current engineering challenges. Cross-disciplinary projects, integrate knowledge from different fields to address multifaceted problems. We will show examples. So contextual awareness. Then the next one is reflective practice, critical incident questionnaires. Use short questionnaires after significant events. For example, in a course, significant events are labs, projects, when something happens, to prompt reflection on what went well and what could be improved and why. If that could happen, it becomes a reflective practice. Learning journals. This we have presented in one of the earlier units. Encourage students to regularly document their learning process, challenges and insights. Initially, learning journal is only for the student, and at a later stage he can decide whether he wants to share with instructor or anybody. And then you have collaborative learning, small group discussions, facilitate structured discussions where students share ideas, challenge each other's thinking and build consensus. And peer review, have students critique each other's work and focus on clarity, logic and evidence. And another instructional method is problem-based learning, which has been extensively presented to you in the earlier units. And 7th one is Socratic questioning. Use open-ended questions to guide students' thinking, challenge their assumptions and explore different perspectives. Socratic questioning, it requires, teacher cannot do that individually with each student. But wherever it is possible, it's a good way of instruction. Now mind you, when you look at all those different instructional methods to promote critical thinking, again it may look daunting, and this is where are you going to conduct a course on critical thinking, or are you going to have one important unit in one course on critical thinking, or are you which course will you incorporate? These are all the issues that will come. Otherwise you are only presenting some view, some detail, which anyway we are not going to practice. So the main thing is there are instructional methods that we explored earlier, like very important thing is problem-based learning, okay, or project-based learning. Either of those methods can subsume many of the other instructional methods. Like a problem-based learning can be collaborative, it's done in a group, and you can incorporate Socratic questioning. Depending on how you orchestrate this and how you design the rubrics for that, you can infuse the issues of critical thinking into that. That means you don't have to label it as critical thinking, but if you carefully design the rubrics and the process orchestration, if you do it right, then critical thinking can be incorporated into several activities that we are already doing. It is only the way you are doing our activity gets slightly modified, and the way you are assessing, the way you are evaluating, they will all get modified if you consciously build that into some activities. And once again, every instructional unit doesn't have to incorporate this. A faculty member can choose one instructional unit, let's say he has 6 to 8 instructional units in a course. He can take one, choose an appropriate one and incorporate these features into that. That's the way you can bring in without disturbing, demanding major changes in the curriculum and so on. Now, one example activity for instruction for critical thinking. Here one of the standard issues you can say, and you can also choose an issue like coming from one of the 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. You can get any number of examples if you look at those goals. So, sustainable urban transportation is a problem around which we can apply the instructional methods. Okay, what are the challenging assumptions? If you go through systematically, assumptions audit, as you call it. Have students list their assumptions about electric vehicles, then ask them to research the environmental impact of battery production and disposal to challenge the assumptions that EVs are inherently green. Okay, because that is one of the current issues, right? The whole country is trying to go EV. Devil's advocate. Assign a group to argue against increased investment in public transportation. And forcing them to consider potential downsides, cost, inflexibility, impact on private car ownerships. Just to argue, it is not to come to immediate conclusion, but the idea is the group which is trying to promote EV will have to answer these questions. I still remember one of the local town planners in Bangalore. He came for a discussion long back to the institute. They have designed all the the overhead, I shouldn't call it flyovers and then underpasses, and they realized subsequently that they haven't bothered about the pedestrians adequately. Now, how do I incorporate pedestrian convenience into already destroyed system of road networks? So that's what happens if you don't look at all the related issues in it. And I'm sure in Bangalore people would have noticed that if you have flyover, then people cannot walk around that place anymore. Okay, then perspective taking. Role playing, divide students into groups representing different stakeholders, city planners, commuters from different income levels, business owners, environmental advocates. Each group must present their transportation needs and concerns. At least collect the data from the representatives of different stakeholders. Case study. Analyze a city that has successfully implemented a sustainable transportation plan. Example, Copenhagen and Amsterdam, they are known for it. What were the key factors in their success? What challenges did they face? How might their approach be adapted to other contexts? Our context is totally different from Amsterdam and Copenhagen. But they have solved their problem. Maybe you can take some tips from the way they have addressed. Contextual awareness. Historical analysis. Research the history of urban transportation in a specific city. How did past decisions shape the current system? What were the social, economic and environmental consequences? Obviously, if you want to do for a city like Bangalore, you should collect that information. And cross-disciplinary project. Partner with students from urban planning, economics or environmental science to develop a comprehensive sustainable transportation plan for a specific area. Okay. Reflective practice. Critical incident questionnaire. After a field trip to observe a city's transportation system, ask students to reflect on what surprised them, what challenges they observed, what solutions they would propose. Okay. A learning journal. Encourage students to track their evolving understanding of sustainable transportation. This cannot be written, this learning journal cannot be written at the end of the project. It doesn't make any sense. You have to record as and when you go, practically either every day or after every event. Noting how their initial assumptions have changed and what new questions have arisen. Once you are able to record that for yourself, you will know that you are evolving with more and more information coming to you. That means you cannot come to a conclusion just with the information that you have. That's a great learning actually. And then you have collaborative learning, small group discussions, present students with controversial issue related to sustainable transportation, congestion pricing, bike lanes versus parking places. These are some examples only. Facilitate a discussion where they share their perspectives and debate the merits of different solutions. Peer review. Have the students review each other's proposed solutions. Each other's means may not be individuals, each group's decisions for a sustainable transportation problem, focusing on feasibility, cost effectiveness and environmental impact. When you have that kind of peer review, make the goal very clear, not arbitrary kind of discussion, with focus on some aspects, feasibility, cost effectiveness and environmental impact or any other particular issue. If you want to use problem-based learning, task students with developing sustainable transportation plan for a specific neighborhood or a district, considering factors such as population density, traffic patterns and environmental concerns. And I am sure you can pick any area in Bangalore, and if you can produce a solution for sustainable transportation, it will be a great achievement. A Socratic questioning, lead a discussion about trade-offs involved in different transportation solutions. For example, if you prioritize bike lanes, what are the potential consequences for business that rely on parking spaces? Some additional methods. These are some methods that were given as per Brookfield. Additional methods that promote critical thinking. With regard to a problem, if you can do what he call argument mapping, there is a tool available for that. Argument maps, it's a very detailed one. So all aspects of a particular problem can be captured graphically in a single place. It is not a mind map. Argument map is a lot more structured and can be quite complex. Teach students to visually represent the structure of an argument, including the main claim, supporting evidence and counter arguments. This helps them to analyze the logic and validity of different perspectives. If you can do that, that is one tool that you can use. As I said, you have a software tool available for that. Then you have inquiry-based learning. Present students with a question or a problem and guide them through the process of investigation. research and discovery, encourage them to formulate their own questions, gather evidence, and draw conclusions based on their findings. This is again, how do you implement that? Do you give different problem to different groups, or do you give the same problem to different groups? How does the instructor interact with each group? What time is available? These all become issues in that. Okay. So that is how you can, we didn't want to get into too much of detail of this. As I said, the major hurdle with regard to instruction for critical learning is, one is what is involved in that, what aspects do you have to train them, and in which course can I incorporate, in what activity can I incorporate. That is the present challenge that we have. Offering a course directly on critical thinking may be possible because plenty of material and techniques are available, but that won't happen in a formal 4-year engineering program. So we have to find a solution together somewhere, if you are very serious about critical thinking. But we are saying we are serious about it, so you have to find a solution. And in the next unit, we try to understand the instruction for apply activity of revised Bloom's taxonomy, and we will look at the other cognitive process of revised Bloom's taxonomy as well in other units. And thank you for your attention.